A lot of people are going to be watching the markets tomorrow as we see what's happened after this drone attack. Drone strikes on the world's largest oil plant in Saudi Arabia yesterday. Houthi rebels claiming responsibility for that attack this morning. And the White House is not buying that. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Iran is behind the attacks. He hasn't offered any proof of that just yet.
Yesterday, Pompeo tweeted this: Tehran is behind nearly 100 attacks on Saudi Arabia, while Rouhani and Zarif pretend to engage in diplomacy. Iran has now launched an unprecedented attack on the world's energy supply. There's no evidence the attacks came from Yemen. Now, exactly who is responsible, that's unclear. A U.S. source with knowledge of the incident tells CNN that there are signs the attacks came from inside Iraq. And the Wall Street Journal says officials are investigating if cruise missiles were fired from southern Iraq, not Yemen, although no evidence to back either claim has emerged.
Saudi Arabia is the world's largest oil exporter. This knocked out half of its oil capacity, which equates to 5% of the daily world supply.
With the wild shootout caught on camera. You can see it right here. Police releasing the video showing officers unleashing a barrage of bullets on a suspect who was on the run.
This morning, shocking police body camera footage just released in Baltimore, capturing a firefight so intense it drowns out the sounds of the sirens. More than a dozen officers unleashing this hail of bullets towards a suspect on the run. That nonstop gunfire lasting more than 30 seconds with at least 154 rounds fired and the suspect killed. Police identifying him as 30-year-old Tyrone Banks, who they say assaulted multiple officers earlier that week in separate instances. This fatal incident beginning outside a convenience store last month.
Watch out, you got a gun.
Escalating into a pursuit through a residential area.
There he is. Behind it.
Infrared aerial images from the police chopper showing the last moments of the chase.
All right, guys, he hit a tree.
And appearing to show Banks pointing his weapon toward the officers.
He's pointing a gun. He's pointing.
These three men are what Afghan security forces say were part of an Isil terror cell that's been busted in Kabul. It's claimed they are responsible for 29 deadly attacks in the capital.
They've been recruiting from from the educated sector of the society, the young educated youth, and they've been very savvy with technology, and they've been ability to plan and launch attacks. They have had a lot of innocent blood on their hand, so it was a huge bust.
The hunt for ISIL, or Daesh as it's called locally, is not easy for the security forces. The group has become more sophisticated and difficult to track down. It is a relative newcomer to the Afghan conflict, but is making its presence felt with a string of attacks and suicide bombings. This is one of their biggest a few weeks ago. The target was a Shia wedding reception in Kabul. More than 60 people were killed and 180 injured.
A moment of silence for 29 people who were killed in two separate attacks in northern Burkina Faso last week. One of the attacks happened at a location where Al Jazeera was filming just a day earlier. A minibus carrying civilians drove over a landmine. 15 people were killed. Heads of state who attended this emergency summit organized by the regional bloc ECOWAS raised concern about the increasing number of cross-border attacks by armed groups in the Sahel. They're also worried the violence could spread to other coastal countries.
In the last 6 months, there have been many terrorist attacks with serious consequences. Violence and insecurity has caused an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. Millions of people are displaced in the region.
The summit brought together presidents from Sahel countries, known as the G5, mandated to fight terrorism and illegal migration across borders.
This is reported to be the aftermath of an airstrike on a hospital in Idlib province, the last remaining rebel-held territory in Syria. Bashar al-Assad's regime has launched an offensive to retake it. It had been declared a de-escalation zone, an area designed to reduce fighting, and Turkish troops were sent in to monitor it. But now regime forces have moved closer to Turkish observation posts, and Idlib is descending into chaos, just like other parts of Syria.
Idlib is slowly disappearing. Idlib is in a situation in which it started to disappear and become torn down in a way that Aleppo was. It's not possible to stay silent about this.
The one bright spot is a committee to draw up a new constitution for Syria is close to being announced.
Everything is ready for voters to cast their ballots. Expectations are high for a new president as Tunisia is stumbling to democracy. It's a tight race between prominent figures and political novices for the top job. Polls give a slight advantage to imprisoned Nabil Qarawi. He's in jail over charges of tax evasion and money laundering. One of his opponents is the sitting Prime Minister Yusuf Shahid. Other potential frontrunners are Abdul Fattah Mourou, Parliament Speaker from the Conservative Ennahda Party, and Abdul Karim Zbidi, the current Defense Minister. Campaigning in this election was loud, not just at rallies, but also on social media. For the first time ever, Tunisia held a televised debate, a milestone barely seen in North Africa.
Like most of us, Donald Trump enjoys the occasional refreshing glass of clean water. But he doesn't seem as keen to keep the water clean as his predecessor. Trump has recently lifted Obama-era restrictions and regulations on the spraying of chemicals and pesticides near streams, wetlands, and other bodies of water. So what has changed? Well, during the Obama era, if you wanted to use certain chemical pesticides and sprays near a body of water, you needed a permit. Now, you don't. There's certainly going to be a lot of rejoicing about this from certain sectors. Many American farmers and manufacturers felt that they were being crushed by the Obama-era regulations intended to curb water pollution.
It would be great if farmers didn't have to hire an army of consultants and lawyers just to be able to farm.
Now, the new rules are being criticized as overly vague, with the decision about what bodies of water get protected being decided on a case-by-case basis.
Tropical storm Humberto strengthening overnight and nearing Bahamas right now.
This is the last thing that people there need right now. The island still reeling from Hurricane Dorian and now bracing for strong wind gusts and heavy rain.
So let's go right over to Rob, who's tracking the impact on the Bahamas. He's also looking at what this storm could bring to the U.S. Rob, good morning to you.
Good morning, Dan. You have aid workers, you have recovery efforts, you have people that are just struggling with shelter over in the Bahamas, and this is dangerously close to where all that is going down. The National Hurricane Center baptizing Tropical Depression number 9 to become Humberto with 40-mile-an-hour winds. Right now, centered about 70 miles east of Great Abaco Island, though. The fact that it's east, though, that is the good news. You can see a lot of the action on this is on the eastern fringe of this, which means that's where most of the heavy weather will be. And these are computer models which were in disarray in a number of storms before this. Fairly good agreement with where this thing is going, which is not towards the U.S. Should scoot out to sea as a cold front kind of picks its way up.
Sian is a special car, I would say an hypercar for a special Lamborghini customer. That's why we're going to produce only 63 units, and the good news is that they are already all sold out. The price is 2.5 million euro, not bad, but that shows being serious, the attraction of the brand of today. I do believe with this unique application of a supercapacitor with a 48-volt engine, we are able to do another step versus the best performance ever Lamborghini never produced in Sant'Agata.